All right, well, policy analyst and chairperson of the Election Monitoring Network, Nkosikhulule Nyembezi, joins us now for a conversation. Mr. Nyembezi, a pleasure to have you on SABC News. Thanks for being with us, sir.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
All right, let's talk about your thoughts then on the minister being ordered to reopen this nomination process for the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel. Also, the reasons that have been set out and given as to why he should indeed reopen this nomination process. Things like gender parity, representation. Your thoughts?
Yes, it's important that the panel is representative of South Africans, particularly on the issue of gender and age, because the recommendations that they are going to make are going to have far-reaching consequences. The issue of gender and age is very important because we now know that the generation of born frees and those born after 2000 are increasingly taking part in the elections. So their voices are going to be important in terms of the electoral system going forward. So it's a good thing that has been recommended by the Portfolio Committee.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, initially there had been criticisms of the minister, but I think the opposition, the DA, as well as, if I remember correctly, Outer, they were criticizing the minister for delaying the establishment of the panel in the first place. Surely this process and having to, reopen the nomination process and, going back to the drawing board will certainly then delay things even further, won't it?
It shouldn't be delayed under normal circumstances. They were correct in criticizing the minister for the delays because there was no communication proper as to what was holding the process back. South Africans had expected that the process is going to be undertaken speedily because it is an outcome of a court process. The Constitutional Court did mandate the government to act on these issues. So I don't think that there's going to be a delay because there must be integrity with this. South Africans must have a buy-in in this. So it's no use rushing things or making things that are half-baked if people are not going to be not going to have a buy-in. So I think it's just one of those consequences we must live with.
Yeah, and let's go into what exactly why this is essential. I mean, what would electoral reform entail, and what is its importance? I find it quite interesting that Nkosikhulule, who was indeed shortlisted for the panel, himself said this week, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And he was talking about, South Africa's electoral system and saying it's not to blame for the country's many crises. I mean, what do you make of Nkosikhulule saying that? But maybe let's also then, while we talk about that, then also talk about what exactly this process would entail and what the ultimate, what it would give South Africans, basically.
I think the panel should be able to take views from a wide spectrum of South Africans to hear what they say, synthesize those views, and then give it to decision makers so that proper decisions can be taken. We will remember that South Africa comes from since 1994 when we had the interim constitution. Then there had to be transition measures. So in the first elections, we had to vote for political parties only, because if we had included individuals as a mixed system, we would have ended up with South Africans doing a tribal referendum. The leaders, the freedom fighters, had been in exile, in prison, underground. So South Africans didn't know much about them. So back in 1994, we could not have had a mixed system. What we needed to have after 1996 constitution was a mix now, because that right falls with the individuals, and the government delayed in amending the electoral system so that it is not only political parties, but also individuals, including the issues of constituency representation, so that the citizens can know who the individual is representing them and they can hold them accountable. So we are ripe as South Africans to have that mix, particularly because for the first time, independent candidates will be contesting elections at provincial and national level and national and provincial level in 2024.
Right. Mr. Nyembezi, all right, let's maybe take a few steps back because, Parliament's Home Affairs Committee had made the decision that the minister, rather than Parliament, should have the responsibility to appoint the Electoral Reform Panel. In retrospect, and, after everything that's happened and where we are now, do you think that that was the way to go? Was that certainly a good idea? And I mean, we're always talking about the separation of powers. Was it best placed in the hands of the minister?
I still think that, yes, it is best placed because also Parliament continues to play an oversight role to see if the minister is discharging that mandate appropriately. What I can call for and I can hope for is for the ordinary South Africans to have a voice in terms of the nominations, the motivation for the individuals concerned, and then the interaction with that panel. So I don't think it's a mistake to have the minister, but the minister must know that there must be no undue delays because these issues of electoral reforms are sensitive. So we need to have enough time so that everybody feels that their views have been heard and so that we can begin to influence one another as South Africans as to the outcome and the recommendations that end up being adopted.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to electoral reform, what do you see as being the major gaps and that need to be addressed?
There are major gaps. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on this issue of representation and also of independent candidates. The issue here is that Section 19 of the Constitution says the right to vote and the right to stand for public office belongs to the individual citizens. Political parties only come as the vehicle, but it looks like now political parties have been hijacking the process by delaying these reforms because they know that half of parliament will now be occupied by independent candidates. Or even more, they know now that we have a constituency system that emphasizes the citizen as the center of the process and not the political party, their deployment committees, and so on. So there is a lot that is coming up that is likely to shake the ground in a positive way because it should give power to the citizens because the Constitution says that right under Section 19 to make political choices belong to individual citizens.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for giving us your time. Nkosikhulule Nyembezi is a policy analyst and chairperson of the Elections Monitoring Network. There, speaking to us, of course, on the minister being ordered to reopen the nomination process for the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel.